This is going to be a longer video, so grab something to drink. In this video, I will be covering a framework for my national security paganism philosophy. I am going to consider this form of paganism to be a philosophy more than anything else. It can also be seen as a civic form of paganism. You are free to use this framework or not. You can also modify it as you see fit. This framework should fit with most versions of paganism. I tried to keep this framework as politically neutral as possible, so it could be seen as a universal framework. I am a solitary pagan and have been for a long time. This framework will work for solitary pagans and pagans that have their own community. I would also like to note that this philosophy is still a work in progress. I've only been working on this philosophy for a month, so I might change my mind on some things in the future. However, what I have put in this framework are things that I support. This will not change for the foreseeable future, because I am going to be using this national security paganism philosophy going forward. This video is part 1 of my framework. It will be split up into 2 different sections. The first section is going to be a short section on the gods, and the second section will focus on the 5 pillars of this framework. I will be creating a part 2 sometime in the future with the other stuff that will make up this framework. However, I would like to emphasize that this framework is for you or your community. You do not have to go out of your way to help people you don't know, but you can. It's your call. The gods. The first section we have is the gods. You can venerate any gods that you wish for this framework, but I would recommend venerating a god of war. It could be a god of war from your own pagan tradition or one from outside it. You could also venerate more than one god of war. You are not limited to just one. If you are looking to only venerate one god of war, then I would highly recommend Odin. Odin could be considered a spatial god to some degree, so I think he fits better than other warrior gods. Athena would also be a good choice, but she's not a spatial god. I would also recommend venerating a god or goddess of the hearth. I personally venerate Hestia, but I think the Hindu god Agni would fit really well into this framework. Most hearth gods can protect you inside buildings, but I think Agni has influence outside of buildings. This makes him a more versatile god of the hearth. I would also like to point out that hearth gods are spatial or liminal gods, so it doesn't matter if you venerate one that comes from outside of your pantheon. I prefer spatial gods, pardon me, because non-spatial gods were historically seen as less powerful outside of their territory. This does not mean they were useless, it just means that you had to be perfect with your rituals or you weren't going to get the desired result. The closer you were to their territory, the more powerful they would become. But spatial or liminal gods can show up anywhere and they won't lose any of their power. The 5 pillars of national security paganism. The first pillar of national security paganism is stewardship. This pillar involves preserving knowledge and your local history. I think this is important to any pagan philosophy, but I don't see this talked about much. Preserving your local history is very important, and it should be a priority. The same could be said for your family history. Your local pagan community won't last long if your institutions become corrupt. So I would highly recommend figuring out a way to safeguard and protect your local institutions. You want to make sure that you maintain your home. You want to do this for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that you do not want your house to fall apart. The second reason is that maintaining your house could be seen as an offering to the hearth god or goddess that you venerate. Don't be like the Chinese and make sure you maintain your infrastructure. Maintaining your home and infrastructure is a must. The last thing you want to do for this pillar is to ensure financial and economic stability. This should be for you, your family, and your community if you have one. Things start to fall apart if your local economy stops working properly. The second pillar is vigilance. The first thing you'll want to do for this pillar is study history. You should study the history of your country, people, and your perceived enemies. If you don't know the history of your people or the history of your enemies, then it will be difficult for you to protect your people. Studying geopolitics is a must. You should be aware of what's happening in the world and how it can negatively impact you. Studying political risk can help you build your own personal wealth, so I highly recommend studying it. You don't have to make a business out of it like I'm doing. It's perfectly fine to use it for personal gain or to help your family make money. I wasn't going to make this framework political, but I highly recommend studying the Austrian and Chicago schools of economic thought. I think these schools of thought are more in line with paganism than the other schools that exist. Learning foreign languages could greatly help your survival chances if something bad happens in the future. You should definitely learn the languages that your perceived enemies speak, because it might help you out in the future. Make sure that you maintain your critical thinking skills and learn legal intelligence gathering skills. You will be able to better protect your people if you have a good idea of what's coming your way. Preparedness and prepping are the third pillar. This should go without saying because these things have historically been a part of paganism. You will want to make sure that you are as self-reliant as possible in case something bad happens. Make sure your logistics are in order. If your logistics or supply chain gets messed with, then that will negatively impact you. So make sure that you have some food and water stocked up for an emergency. I would recommend having enough food and water to last a couple months. Especially in Asia, I know stocking up on food and water is not an Asian value, but most Asian countries do not have the capability to feed all their people if something bad happens. Especially Japan. The last time I checked, their stockpile could only feed between 35 to 45% of the Japanese population. The rest of the country would be cooked. You will want to be prepared for any disasters that might come your way. Keep some extra medicine on hand if you can do that too. It is also important that you maintain a financial emergency fund. Service is the fourth pillar. I was going to add more to this pillar, but I thought that this was good enough for a bare minimum. I think service is more important for your community if you have one. If you don't have one, then you can skip this pillar if you want. You should prioritize helping your community out with teaching, volunteer work, and mentoring. This will make your community strong. I do not think you have to go out of your way to do these things for people outside of your community, but you should do these things for your community. You can do whatever you want though. This pillar is all up to you and what you think is right. The last pillar is wisdom. This pillar is dedicated to things that you should continually study over the course of your life. The first thing is the classics. People tend to overlook the classics, but they can be quite useful. Keeping up to date with technology is important because technology can help you better protect your people. I know there are a lot of pagans that dislike technology, but it is part of the earth. Everything on this planet is part of the earth, and it is stupid to not use what's available to you. Psychology is important for understanding how other people think. Studying ethics is good for your community. Studying philosophy will help you to improve your critical skills thinking, or your critical thinking skills, and make you a better thinker. Studying military strategy and philosophers is also important. I would highly recommend studying Clausewitz. Pagans have historically been decentralized, and this has not changed in the modern era. So I highly recommend studying guerrilla warfare. You can start with studying the Vikings or the Vietnam War. Most pagan communities will only survive in wartime by utilizing guerrilla war tactics, because we don't have the numbers. Japan, India, and China are exceptions to this rule. I would make studying guerrilla warfare a top priority, because you'll never know when you need it. But diplomacy should always be our number one goal as pagans, because we don't have the numbers. I'm going to work on a part 2 for this framework, but I have no idea when I'll be starting that yet, so it will be out when it gets out. Thanks for listening and watching. Have a fantastic day or night.